What happens when royalty meets reality television and absolutely everything goes wrong? In just 34 seconds, a prince transforms from composed guest to unwelcome visitor, all because of one comment he never should have made. This is the story of the most explosive moment ever captured on The View. A moment so shocking that producers had no choice but to end it all right there on live television. The stage was set for what everyone thought would be a routine celebrity interview. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, had flown in from California specifically to sit down with the hosts of The View. The bookers had promised him a friendly conversation, a chance to talk about his latest charity work, his life in America, and maybe a few softball questions about his family. What he got instead was something nobody could have predicted. Sunny Hostin, known for her sharp legal mind and her refusal to hold back, was the co-host assigned to lead this particular segment. She had done her homework. She had prepared questions that went beyond the usual celebrity puff pieces. She wanted real answers, real conversation, real substance. And from the very first moment Prince Harry sat down in that chair, you could feel the tension building in the studio. The audience applauded as he walked out. He smiled, he waved, he took his seat with all the confidence of someone who had done 1,000 interviews before. Sunny greeted him warmly, thanked him for coming, and started with what seemed like a gentle question about his transition to life in California. He answered smoothly, talking about the weather, the lifestyle, the freedom he felt. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. But then Sunny shifted gears. She leaned forward slightly, her expression serious, and asked him about something he clearly did not want to discuss. She brought up his recent statements about the media, about privacy, about the way he felt he had been treated by the press over the years. She asked him how he could complain about privacy when he had written a tell-all book, when he had done interview after interview, when he had shared the most intimate details of his life with millions of people around the world. Prince Harry paused. You could see the shift in his body language. His smile faded. His shoulders tensed. He took a breath, and then he started to answer, but his tone had changed. Gone was the friendly, relaxed guest. In his place sat someone who suddenly seemed defensive, irritated, like he had not expected to be challenged on national television. He said, "Well, Sunny, I think there is a difference between sharing your truth and being hunted by photographers. I think there is a difference between telling your story on your own terms and having lies printed about you every single day." Sunny nodded, but she was not done. She followed up immediately. She said, "But you chose to write that book. You chose to do those interviews. Nobody forced you. So how is that any different from what the media does? They are just doing their job, just like you are doing yours." The audience was silent now. You could feel the energy in the room changing. This was not the light, fluffy interview anyone had expected. This was real. This was getting uncomfortable, and Prince Harry did not like it one bit. He leaned back in his chair and said, "I do not think you understand what it is like to have your entire life dissected by people who have never met you. I do not think you understand what it is like to have your wife attacked, your children talked about, your family torn apart by tabloids that do not care about the truth." Sunny did not back down. She kept her voice calm, her tone professional, but she was not going to let him off the hook. She said, "I actually do understand. I have been in the public eye. I have been criticized. I have had my family talked about. But I do not write books about it and then complain when people have opinions. You cannot have it both ways." That was when things really started to unravel. Prince Harry sat up straighter. His face was flushed now. His jaw was tight. He looked directly at Sunny and said something that made the entire studio gasp. He said, "You know what, Sunny? Maybe the problem is that people like you just do not get it. Maybe the problem is that you sit here in your comfortable chair with your comfortable job and you judge people whose lives you could never understand. Maybe you should try walking in my shoes for one day before you act like you know everything." The audience gasped. The other co-hosts looked at each other in shock, but Sunny, to her credit, did not flinch. She sat there, completely composed, and let his words hang in the air for a moment. Then she responded, and her response was calm, measured, and absolutely devastating. She said, "I do not need to walk in your shoes to have an opinion. That is what living in a democracy means. That is what free speech means. And if you cannot handle being asked tough questions, maybe you should not be doing interviews. Maybe you should stop complaining about the media and just stay quiet if you do not want people to respond to the things you say." Prince Harry was furious now. You could see it written all over his face. He leaned forward, pointing his finger at her, and his voice got louder. He said, "You think you are so smart, do you not? You think you have all the answers. But let me tell you something. You have no idea what you are talking about. You sit here and you lecture me like you are some kind of expert on my life, but you do not know anything. You do not know what I have been through. You do not know what my family has been through." Sunny did not raise her voice. She did not match his energy. She simply said, "I am not lecturing you. I am asking you questions. That is my job. And if you do not like the questions, you are free to leave." That was the line that broke everything. Prince Harry stood up. He ripped off his microphone and threw it down on the table in front of him. The sound of it hitting the wood echoed through the studio. He looked at Sunny with pure anger and said, "You know what? I am done with this. I am done with people like you who think they can talk to me however they want just because I am trying to be honest. This is exactly why I left the UK. This is exactly why I wanted nothing to do with the media anymore. Because of people like you." Sunny remained seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She looked at him and said, "I'm sorry you feel that way, but asking you to explain your own contradictions is not an attack. It is journalism." Prince Harry shook his head. He looked around at the other hosts, expecting them to back him up, to tell Sunny she had gone too far. But they said nothing. They just sat there, watching, because deep down, they knew she was right. She had not attacked him. She had not insulted him. She had simply asked him to defend his own choices, his own words, and he could not do it. He turned back to Sunny one more time and said, "You are unbelievable. You are absolutely unbelievable. I came here thinking this would be a respectful conversation, and instead you ambushed me. You set me up." Sunny tilted her head slightly, still completely calm, and said, "I did not ambush you. I asked you questions based on things you have said publicly. If you cannot handle that, then maybe you should reconsider putting yourself in the public eye." That was it. That was the moment. Prince Harry let out a bitter laugh, the kind of laugh that has no humor in it at all, and said, "Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. I do not have to sit here and take this." And then he walked off. Right there, in the middle of the segment, he turned and walked off the set. The cameras followed him as he stormed through the studio, past the stunned crew members, past the producers who were frantically trying to figure out what to do. He did not look back. He did not stop. He just left. Back on the set, Sunny sat there for a moment, processing what had just happened. The other hosts were frozen, unsure of what to say. The audience was completely silent, still trying to understand what they had just witnessed. And then Sunny, but ever the professional, looked directly into the camera and said, "Well, I guess we will have to take an early commercial break." But before they could cut away, you could hear the commotion off stage. You could hear Prince Harry yelling at someone, though the words were not clear. You could hear doors slamming. You could hear the chaos of a television show that had completely fallen apart in real time. When they came back from commercial, Prince Harry was gone. Sunny addressed the audience directly, her voice steady and professional. She said, "As you all saw, Our guest chose to leave during our conversation. I want to be clear. I was simply doing my job as a journalist. I was asking questions that I believe the public deserves answers to. If those questions made him uncomfortable, I am sorry. But I will not apologize for doing my job. The audience erupted in applause. They stood up, clapping, cheering, showing their support for Sunny. Because they understood what had just happened. They understood that she had not done anything wrong. She had asked fair questions, tough questions, the kind of questions that journalists are supposed to ask. And Prince Harry had not been able to handle it. But the drama was not over yet. Because while Sunny was speaking to the audience, something else was happening backstage. Security had been called. Not by Sunny, not by the producers, but because Prince Harry himself had created a scene so intense that they felt they had no choice. According to people who were there, Prince Harry had cornered one of the producers in the hallway. He was demanding an apology from Sunny. He was demanding that they cut the segment from the broadcast. He was making threats about lawsuits, about never working with the network again, about going to the press and telling his side of the story. The producer tried to calm him down. They tried to explain that everything Sunny had asked was fair game, that he had agreed to the interview, that he could not control what questions were asked, but he did not want to hear it. He was too angry, too embarrassed, too caught up in his own sense of being wronged. And then, according to multiple witnesses, he said something that sealed his fate. He looked at the producer and said, "Do you know who I am? Do you have any idea who you are dealing with? I could ruin this show with one phone call. I could make sure none of you ever work in television again." That was when security stepped in. Not because he was being physically threatening, but because his behavior had crossed a line. You cannot threaten the staff. You cannot make demands like that. You cannot act like the rules do not apply to you just because of who you are. And that is exactly what Prince Harry was doing. They escorted him out of the building. Not roughly, not aggressively, but firmly. They walked him to the exit and made it very clear that he was not welcome back. And just like that, a prince who had flown across the country for a simple interview found himself being shown the door like any other guest who had overstayed their welcome. Back on set, Sunny continued the show. She did not dwell on what had happened. She did not gloat. She simply moved on to the next topic, because that is what professionals do. But you could see in her eyes that she knew exactly what had just happened. She had stood her ground. She had refused to be intimidated. She had done her job, and she had done it well. The other hosts rallied around her during the commercial breaks. They told her she had handled it perfectly. They told her she had nothing to apologize for. They told her that Prince Harry had shown his true colors, and it was not pretty. And they were right. Because what had started as a routine celebrity interview had turned into something much bigger. It had become a lesson in accountability, a lesson in how not to handle criticism, a lesson in what happens when someone who is used to being treated with kid gloves suddenly faces real questions from someone who refuses to back down. Prince Harry had walked into that studio expecting everyone to agree with him, to sympathize with him, to nod along while he talked about how hard his life had been. And when Sunny refused to do that, when she pushed back and asked him to explain himself, he could not handle it. He fell apart. He got angry. He made threats. He acted like a child throwing a tantrum when things did not go his way. And Sunny? Sunny showed everyone watching how a real professional handles a difficult situation. She stayed calm. She stayed respectful. She did not raise her voice or lose her temper. She simply asked questions and refused to be bullied into silence. She reminded everyone that being famous does not mean you get to avoid accountability. Being a prince does not mean you get to control the narrative. And being a guest on a talk show does not mean the hosts have to agree with everything you say. The moment Prince Harry walked off that set, he lost. He lost the argument. He lost the respect of everyone watching, and he lost any chance of controlling the story. Because by storming off, by throwing his microphone, by threatening the staff, he proved everything Sonny had been suggesting. He proved that he cannot handle criticism. He proved that he wants all the benefits of being in the public eye without any of the responsibilities. He proved that he thinks the rules do not apply to him. The audience knew it. The viewers at home knew it. And most importantly, Sonny knew it. That is why she did not chase after him. That is why she did not try to smooth things over. She let his actions speak for themselves. She let him show everyone exactly who he was when things did not go his way. And what about Prince Harry? Where did he go after he was escorted out of the building? According to sources, he got into his car and left immediately. No apologies, no statements, no explanations. Just silence. Because what could he possibly say? How could he spin walking off a live television interview in the middle of a conversation? How could he explain threatening the staff? How could he justify acting like someone who believes he is above being questioned? He could not. So he said nothing, and his silence spoke volumes. Meanwhile, clips of the exchange started spreading online within minutes. People could not believe what they had just seen. Social media exploded with reactions. Some people defended Prince Harry, saying Sonny had been too aggressive, too confrontational. But the vast majority of people saw it for what it really was. They saw a journalist doing her job and a celebrity who could not handle being held accountable. The video went viral. Millions of people watched it, rewatched it, analyzed every word, every gesture, every moment. And with each viewing, the consensus grew stronger. Sonny had been professional. Sonny had been fair. And Prince Harry had acted like someone who thought he deserved special treatment just because of his title. The network stood by Sonny completely. They released a statement saying that she had conducted herself with professionalism and integrity, and that they supported her 100%. They made it clear that Prince Harry had been the one who chose to walk off, and that they had no regrets about how the interview had been conducted. Other journalists came to her defense too. They praised her for asking tough questions. They praised her for not backing down. They praised her for showing that accountability matters, no matter who you are. Because that is what good journalism is supposed to do. It is supposed to hold people accountable. It is supposed to ask the questions that make people uncomfortable. It is supposed to seek the truth, even when the truth is not convenient. And Sonny had done exactly that. She had asked Prince Harry to explain the contradictions in his own story. She had asked him how he could complain about privacy while sharing intimate details of his life for profit. She had asked him to defend his choices, and when he could not, when he got angry instead, she had remained calm and professional. She had won the argument without even trying, simply by being prepared, by being fair, and by refusing to be intimidated. The contrast between them could not have been clearer. Sonny, poised and in control. Prince Harry, angry and defensive. Sonny, asking questions. Prince Harry, making excuses. Sonny, representing journalism at its best. Prince Harry, representing entitlement at its worst. This was not just a celebrity meltdown. This was a masterclass in how to conduct yourself under pressure. Sonny showed everyone watching that you do not have to raise your voice to make your point. You do not have to get angry to stand your ground. You just have to be prepared, be professional, and be willing to ask the questions that need to be asked. Prince Harry, on the other hand, showed everyone what happens when you are not prepared to defend your own actions. He showed what happens when you expect everyone to agree with you and cannot handle it when they do not. He showed what happens when you believe your title, your status, your fame should protect you from criticism. And the truth is, it does not matter who you are. It does not matter if you are a prince or a pauper. If you put yourself in the public eye, if you write books and give interviews and share your story, you open yourself up to questions. you open yourself up to criticism. You open yourself up to people who might not agree with everything you say. And if you cannot handle that, if you cannot defend your own choices, then maybe you should not be doing it in the first place. That is the lesson here. That is what people took away from this whole incident. Not that Sonny was too tough. Not that Prince Harry was treated unfairly. But that accountability matters. That asking questions matters. That journalism matters. And that no one, absolutely no one, is above being asked to explain themselves. Sonny Hostin did not set out to humiliate Prince Harry. She did not ambush him. She did not attack him. She simply asked him questions based on his own public statements, and when he could not answer them, when he got defensive and angry instead, she let his reaction speak for itself. She did not have to say he was wrong. She did not have to argue with him. She just had to stay calm and let him show everyone who he really was. And that is exactly what happened. In 34 seconds, Prince Harry went from composed to furious, from confident to defensive, from guest to exile, all because he could not handle being asked to defend his own contradictions. This was not just a television moment. This was a cultural moment, a moment that reminded everyone that fame does not equal immunity, that titles do not equal respect, that if you want people to take you seriously, you have to be able to back up your words with actions. You have to be able to defend your choices. You have to be able to handle criticism without falling apart. Prince Harry failed that test. He failed it spectacularly. He failed it in front of millions of people. And no amount of spin, no amount of explanations, no amount of silence can change what everyone saw with their own eyes. Sonny Hostin walked into that interview prepared to do her job. She walked out having done exactly that. She asked tough questions. She held someone accountable. She refused to be intimidated. And she showed everyone watching what real journalism looks like. Prince Harry walked into that interview expecting to be treated with kid gloves. He walked out having shown the entire world that he cannot handle real questions from real journalists. He walked out having proven that he wants all the attention without any of the accountability. He walked out having lost the respect of millions of people who watched him throw a tantrum on live television. This is what happens when entitlement meets reality. This is what happens when someone who is used to being protected suddenly faces someone who refuses to protect them. This is what happens when you think your status makes you untouchable. Prince Harry got kicked off The View, not because Sonny Hostin was mean to him, not because she ambushed him. He got kicked off because he could not handle being questioned. He got kicked off because he threw a fit when things did not go his way. He got kicked off because he made threats and acted like the rules do not apply to him. And Sonny? Sonny did what good journalists do. She asked questions. She listened to the answers. And when the answers did not make sense, she followed up. She did not let him off the hook. She pointed out contradictions calmly and professionally. That is why this moment matters. That is why people are still talking about it. That is why it went viral. Because it was not just drama for the sake of drama. It was a real moment of accountability. A real example of what happens when someone refuses to be silenced, refuses to back down, refuses to treat someone with kid gloves just because of who they are. In the end, Prince Harry left that studio angry, embarrassed, and defeated. Sonny left that studio having done her job with grace, professionalism, and integrity. The audience left knowing they had witnessed something real, something unscripted, something that reminded them why good journalism matters. And that 34 seconds when Prince Harry went from composed to furious will be remembered as one of the most dramatic moments in talk show history. This was not just an interview gone wrong. This was a lesson in what happens when you cannot defend your own contradictions. And it all happened in 34 seconds.